5 years ago, she ran. She told herself she was brave, that leaving before he could hurt her was the smart thing to do. She was wrong about the hurt. He never got the chance to give it to her. But she was right about one thing. Saltmere was far enough from the Ashvorn reaches that no guard had ever come down this road. Until today. Mira saw the dark coat first. Then the horse. Then the Ashvorn badge on the rider's chest, catching the morning light like a coin. Her hands went still over her herb bundles. Her heart did not. She looked across the market stall. Lena was chasing a harbor cat through the fish tables. Rin was standing very still, watching the rider on the road. The rider was already watching them back. 5 years is a long time to build a life. Mira had built a good one. She had a small house 2 streets from the harbor, a herb stall at the east end of the Saltmere market. A neighbor, old Bren, who watched the twins on mornings when Mira needed both hands free for inventory. She had salt air and fish smells and a view of the gray sea from her kitchen window. She had Rin and Lena. They were 5 now. Dark curls and quick feet and voices that bounced off the cottage walls every morning before the sun was fully up. Rin had her careful way of watching the world before he spoke. He studied things, measured them. He had been doing it since he was 8 months old, and she had decided it was one of the most unsettling things she had ever loved. Lena had absolutely no careful way about her at all. She had both their father's eyes. Both of them did. Mira had spent 5 years not thinking about that. She had become very good at not thinking about it. She arranged it in her mind the way she arranged the herb stall. Everything in its place. Nothing spilling over. Nothing left where it could catch. The stall opened at dawn. Mira was there before the fishermen finished unloading their catch. She set out rosemary and dried lavender and small paper packets of fever bark in neat rows along the wooden counter. She smiled at her regulars. She gave old Bren's granddaughter a twist of peppermint, free of charge, because Bren had saved her more times than she could count. She was careful. She was small. She was forgettable. That was the point. She had not always been those things. 5 years ago, she had been Mira of House Vesta, a minor Omega family, palace-born. Her mother worked the hearth fires. Her father sharpened the Alpha's knives. 18 years in the background of important rooms, present and unnamed. Then, she had turned 22. And something had moved in her chest that had never moved before. She had spent 3 weeks trying not to feel it. Then she heard something she was not meant to hear. A council member. A corridor. Words that landed like a blade. She left that night, before sunrise, before the ceremony, before he could say them out loud. She had told herself she was saving herself the pain. That leaving first was the only pride she had left. She had not known about the twins yet. Across the market, the rider with the Ashvorn badge had not moved. He sat straight-backed on his dark horse at the far end of the road, watching her stall. Mira kept her hands moving. She tied off a bundle of rosemary, reached for the twine, kept her face angled down. Lena had stopped chasing the cat. She had drifted back to the stall, the way she always did when she felt her mother's mood change. She was leaning against the counter now, watching the rider from under her dark curls. Rin was already at Mira's side. He had moved there without being asked. He did that. He had always done that. Mama. His voice was low and careful, far too careful for 5 years old. Who is the man on the horse? I don't know, Mira said, which was the truth. She tied the rosemary, set it down, reached for the next bundle. He's looking at us, Rin said. I know. She reached over and moved him gently behind the table, between her and the wall of dried herbs. Stay here, she said. Don't go near the road. Rin did not argue. He stood where she put him and kept watching. Lena watched too, chin resting on the counter. amber eyes tracking the rider with the same direct attention she gave to everything in the world that interested her, which was everything. The rider did not approach. He watched the stall for 20 minutes. Then he turned his horse and rode back the way he had come. Mira did not breathe normally until he had disappeared past the harbor curve. She had told herself for 5 years that she was safe. Saltmere was 200 miles from the Ashvorn reaches. The south coast was fishing villages and salt traders and small ambitions. No one here cared about palace politics. No one here knew the word Ashvorn. She had been careful about that too. She heard news sometimes. A trader would pass through and mention the north over Bren's supper table. The Alpha King had not taken a mate. That was the news that traveled farthest, that season after season came south in different mouths saying the same thing. No Luna. No ceremony. The pack council in an uproar about succession. 2 winters past, a wool merchant had sat at Bren's table and shaken his head over his soup. 5 years, he had said. Still no Luna. The pack council is fit to riot. Bren had made a sympathetic noise, spooning gravy. Mira had kept her eyes on the fire. They say he still looks for her. The merchant had lowered his voice, which was how she knew the story was getting interesting to him. The girl who disappeared the night before the mating ceremony. Omega family, palace-born, vanished without a trace. Bren had tilted her head. Who looks? The Alpha himself, a shrug. Though I heard the official search was called off. 6 months back, his beta confirmed it. Mira had set her cup down, very carefully. The fire had been warm on her face. She had breathed out. Stopped searching. 6 months back. Good. That was good. That meant safe. But the merchant had said one more thing, almost as an afterthought, pulling on his coat to leave. Odd thing is, he never marked anyone else. 5 years and no Luna. Some kings wait a year out of respect for the loss. But 5 years, he had paused in the doorway, looking for the word. That's not waiting, that's grief. The door had closed. Mira had looked at the fire for a long time. She had almost asked Bren what she thought. She had stopped herself. There was nothing to ask. Nothing that would change anything. He had been planning to reject her. She had heard it directly, from a council member who had had no reason to lie. And even if there was some small chance she had misunderstood, she had 2 children now. They had a life, a real one. She was not going back. That night she had gone to check on the twins and stood in the doorway watching them sleep. Rin on his back, arms flung out, frowning even in sleep. Lena curled into a ball with one small foot escaping the blanket. Both of them, even sleeping, looking like him. She had touched Lena's dark curls and told herself, very firmly, that it did not matter. It had not helped. It never did. She went back to the kitchen. She sat down at the table. She put her hand flat on the wood and held very still. The bond thread was there. It was always there. A cold, broken thing in the center of her chest. The kind of cold that was not temperature but absence. She had carried it for 5 years the way she carried the scar on her left palm. Present. Permanent, not worth examining. For one moment in the quiet kitchen with the sea moving outside, she almost let herself feel what it meant. What it had always meant. She did not. She stood up. She washed her cup. She went to bed. She was very good at this. 3 days after the rider, Mira made a mistake. She left the twins with Bren for 2 hours while she took delivery of a herb shipment at the harbor. Bren fell asleep. She was 73 and the afternoon was warm, and the chair by the window was comfortable, and the twins had been very quiet for a very long time, which Mira should have recognized as a warning sign even from 2 streets away. But she had not been there to recognize it. When she came back from the harbor with her arms full of dried sage, the cottage was quiet. Too quiet. The chair by the window had Bren in it, asleep, one hand still loosely curled around her cup of tea. The back door was open. Mira set down the sage. Her hands had gone cold. She checked the garden first, then the alley behind the house, then the narrow space between Bren's cottage and the woodshed where the twins liked to stack stones and argue about the order. Empty. All of it. The twins had been gone for at least an hour. She worked the market from the east end inward. Her fishmonger had seen nothing. The baker had. They had come running through, he said, heading east toward the forest road. Following something. Following what? Mira kept her voice steady. Just. He squinted, remembering. A dog, maybe. Silver-colored. Big. Moving fast. Her chest moved in the wrong direction. Silver, in a fishing village on the south coast. Southern wolves were gray or black or brown. Silver was Ashvorn coloring. She ran. She found them half a mile east, where the market road curved toward the first line of trees. They were not alone. 3 men on horseback had stopped on the road. Dark coats. Ashvorn badges bright on their lapels in the afternoon sun. One man had already dismounted and was crouched down to the twins' level, talking quietly. Rin had his arms crossed. His best suspicious expression, which for a 5-year-old was remarkably convincing. Lena was talking without pausing for breath. And Mama makes fever bark tea. When I have a cold and it tastes absolutely terrible, but she says it works. Do you live in the forest? What is your dog's name? It looked right at me and then ran this way, so we followed because it seemed like it wanted us to follow. The crouching man looked up when he heard Mira running. His eyes went from her face to the twins, back to her face, to the twins again. His expression changed. She could see the exact moment he understood, the amber eyes on both children, the curve of their faces. He stood slowly. "Is this your children's mother?" he asked, not to Mira, but to Lena. Lena turned, saw Mira, and smiled the way she smiled at everything, wide and full and absolutely unsuspecting. "That's Mama." The man reached for the saddlebag at his horse's flank. He pulled out a small leather case. A rider's mirror, polished glass for catching sunlight, used for long-distance signaling. He tilted it toward the sky. He was sending a message north. The bond thread moved. For the first time in 5 years, it did not feel cold. It felt like a door someone had put their hand on from the other side. Not open, not even warm. Just present, just pressure. Something in her chest pulled north. She made it stop. Mira looked at her children. Rin was looking at her now, not the guards. He had stopped watching the strangers the moment his mother arrived. He was watching her face, reading it the way he always read her face. She put a calm expression on it for him, the kind she had been practicing for 5 years. She was out of time. The message reached Kaelin Ashvorn at the end of a council meeting he had not been listening to. His beta Oswin came in without knocking. He never came in without knocking. The council fell silent. Oswin set the mirror signal transcript on the table in front of Kaelin. He stepped back. He said nothing. He only watched Kaelin's face. Kaelin read the message. He read it twice. The council chamber was very quiet. 12 men and women waiting for him to speak. He was aware of them the way he was aware of furniture, present, unmoved. He stood. He picked up his riding gloves from the chair at his left. "Clear the room," Oswin said from behind him. Kaelin was already walking. He rode through the night. He did not stop. Did not sleep. Oswin rode at his left shoulder and said nothing the entire way, which was exactly why Kaelin had trusted him for 11 years. They reached Saltmere at dawn. Gray light over gray water. Salt air sharp in the cold morning. A harbor town waking up, fishing boats, carts, someone ringing a bell for morning deliveries. The twins were at the east guard post. His scout had kept them there, safe and fed, and, from the sound of Lena's voice carrying through the wooden door, thoroughly entertained. Kalen stood in the doorway before they saw him. The boy sat on a bench with his arms crossed, watching the door with the expression of someone waiting for something to happen and reserving judgment about whether it would be good or bad. The girl stood on a chair, explaining Saltmere's harbor cat population to his scout in exhaustive detail. They were 5 years old. Dark curls, warm olive skin, and they had his eyes. Both of them. Kalen's wolf had been quiet for 5 years, still, like a wound that had closed over without fully healing. It was not quiet now. The girl, Lena, turned when she heard him step through the door. She looked at him the way children look at strangers. Direct, unafraid, already deciding. Then she tilted her head. "You have the same eyes as me," she said. Kalen could not speak for a moment. The boy, Rin, stood up from the bench. He walked to his sister's side. He looked at Kalen with those amber eyes and said nothing, which was somehow worse than anything he could have said. The boy just stood there and watched, steady and patient, like he was waiting for Kalen to prove something. Kalen crouched down to their level. His knees on the wooden floor of a guard post in a fishing village 200 miles from everything he knew. His voice came out low and careful. "What is your name?" "Rin." The boy didn't look away. "What's yours?" "Kalen." Rin held his gaze, measuring. "Mama doesn't talk about kings," Rin said slowly. "But she goes quiet whenever the traders mention Ashvorn. And we have the same eyes as you." Kalen put one hand flat on the floor to steady himself. The girl, Lena, walked forward without asking permission. She took his face in both small hands the way only children do, without apology, without hesitation, and studied him up close, her amber eyes moving across his features like she was looking for something she already half remembered. "You smell like home," she said. "Like Mama, but different." Kalen closed his eyes. His wolf said one thing, over and over, quiet and certain, her. He opened his eyes. He stood. He looked at Ashvorn standing in the corner with the expression of a man who had suspected this for 6 months and was experiencing no satisfaction about being right. "Ashvorn." Kalen's voice was steady. He was working very hard at that. "Find their mother." Ashvorn found her at her herb stall. She was not surprised to see him. Her hands went still over the counter before he was close enough to speak. She had been watching for him, or for someone, since the moment she had been escorted back from the forest road with the twins. She looked at him with gray-green eyes that gave nothing. "He's here," Ashvorn said. "I know." Her voice was flat. She reached under the counter for her shawl, pulling it around her shoulders. "Are the children safe?" "Yes. Fed. Rin has decided to tolerate my scout's presence. Lena has reorganized his saddlebag." Something crossed her face. Not quite a smile. It almost landed. It didn't. She looked down the market road, past the fishmonger and the bread cart and the morning crowd, toward the east post. Her hand moved to her left palm. A small gesture, thumb pressing to the scar there. She didn't seem to know she was doing it. "What does he want?" she asked. "I think that's something you should ask him directly." She looked at Ashvorn. She had the kind of look that measured and did not find much to be uncertain about. "I left," she said. "I stayed gone for 5 years. I have a house and a stall and 2 children in a school here come autumn." Whatever she stopped. Her jaw tightened. "He's not here to take anything from you," Ashvorn said. "He doesn't do that." She looked at him for a long moment. "He was going to reject me at the ceremony," she said. "At the mating ceremony. It was already arranged." Ashvorn went very still. "Who told you that?" not a question. The kind of statement that already knew the answer and was verifying something worse. Lady Voss. The two words landed between them. Ashvorn looked at the harbor, at the fishing boats shifting in the morning swell, at the gulls working the air above the water. He looked at all of these things with the expression of a man adding something up that he should have added years ago. When he looked back at her, his voice was careful. Mira, you need to come with me. He was standing outside the east guard post when she arrived. Tall. Dark coat, no markings. One hand at his side, the other at his horse's bridle. The gray morning light made the silver at his temples look like frost. She would have known him anywhere. On a crowded street in a foreign city. In the dark, she had spent 5 years telling herself she wouldn't, and the moment she rounded the corner and saw his back, she knew she had been lying. He turned when he heard her footsteps on the cobblestones. His face was still, his jaw tight, his eyes very steady. She stopped 6 feet away. Across those 6 feet of salt morning air, she could feel it. The bond thread. The broken one. The thing she had been calling grief for 5 years, because she had not known what else to name it. A coldness in her chest that had never fully left, no matter how warm the cottage was, no matter how full the table. It was not cold now, it was humming. He felt it too. She could tell by the way he breathed, one slow, controlled breath, like someone setting something down before he dropped it. Mira, her name, in his voice. It sounded the same as she remembered, low and careful, like it cost him something. She had spent 5 years forgetting that. Apparently, she had not gotten to it. Kaylin. Her voice came out level. She held that small achievement close. He took 1 step toward her and stopped. Are you well? He asked. She had prepared for many opening questions, not that one. She blinked. Yes. The children are well. They're inside. Lena is explaining Saltmere to my scout in significant detail. The almost smile came back. This time it almost reached her eyes. I know. Ashvorn told me. She looked at him. The scar on his jaw. The silver at his temples that had not been there 5 years ago. The way he stood, still and balanced, and ready for something he wasn't sure would go well. You rode through the night, she said. Yes, you should have slept. I know. His jaw moved once. I couldn't. 6 feet was not far. It was also very far. She had imagined this moment over 5 years. Not often. She had been careful not to imagine it often, but sometimes, in the space between sleep and waking, she had run through it. She had been calm in those imaginings. Brief and reasonable and unaffected. She looked at him now, and none of those words were available. Why did you come yourself? She asked. Ashvorn found them. You could have. You didn't have to come yourself. I did. His voice was very quiet. I did have to. She looked at the cobblestones between them. Her hand went to her left palm again. The scar. She made herself drop it. I'm not going back, she said. I need you to understand that. This is our life. The children are settled here. Rin starts lessons come autumn. Lena, I'm not asking you to go back. She looked up. He was watching her with the same expression Rin used when he was waiting for someone to stop saying the thing that wasn't the thing and say the actual thing. Then what are you asking? He held her gaze. He looked at her the way she felt he had been looking at her for a long time in his own mind. I'm asking you to talk to me, he said. That's all. Just talk. She looked at him for a long moment. She should go. She knew she should go. She had built a whole life so she would never have to stand here, 6 feet from the thing that still felt like home, and make this choice again. She stayed. They stood at the harbor edge. The fishing boats moved on the gray water. The gulls called. Saltmere carried on around them like a normal morning, which it was not. "Tell me why you left," he said. She kept her eyes on the water. It was easier than his face. "I heard Lady Voss talking to the gate guard," she said. Flat, like a report. "The night before the ceremony. Late. Past midnight. I was in the east corridor outside the council chamber." She could still see it. The torchlight on the flagstones, the cold coming up through the floor. Lady Voss's voice carrying through old stone walls the way voices carried, clear and unhurried, the tone of someone stating facts. She said, Mira stopped. She made herself say it. She said, "You know what he'll do at the ceremony." And then she said, "He will stand before the pack and reject you. Publicly. It's already arranged. A king cannot take an Omega servant as his Luna, not with the Northern Alliance watching. You understand this, don't you, girl?" The words were the same 5 years later. She had them exactly. She had never been able to forget them. "She was so certain," Mira said. "She said it the way you say something that's already done. Like telling someone the sun is going to rise. Like she was only telling me so I'd have time to leave with some dignity." He was quiet. The quiet went on long enough that she turned to look at him. His jaw was set. His eyes on the water. She had never seen that particular expression on him before. It was controlled fury, pressed very flat. "Where exactly were you standing?" he asked. "East corridor, second archway from the stair." "What time?" "Late. The harbor bell had rung twice." He nodded once. Something settling. "I was in the eastern tower that night," he said, "writing your mating announcement." A pause that held weight. "I wrote your mother's name in it. Your father's. I was trying to get the wording right. I didn't sleep." She looked at the water. He turned to face her. "I was not in the council chamber. I had not been in the council chamber that evening. Lady Voss was not speaking to anyone who knew my plans, because I had told no one my plans except Ashvorn." His voice was very careful, very even. "I had not arranged a rejection. I had not considered one." Mira felt something shift in her chest. She pressed her thumb to the scar on her palm and held it there. "You could be lying now," she said. "To get me to, I know." He held her gaze. He did not look away. "I could be." He did not say anything else. He let her sit with it. Let the silence do the work of the argument he wasn't making. She understood, in that moment, something she had not understood 5 years ago, that the most convincing thing he could do was stop arguing. Ashvorn stepped forward from the wall where he had been standing with his eyes on the harbor. "Lady Voss was dismissed from the council 4 months after you left," he said, "for interference in an alpha's mating bond. We had evidence she had spoken to palace staff, possibly bribed some of them. We believed she had prevented a message from reaching you." He paused. "We did not know she had gone to you directly. We did not know what she had said." Mira looked at the water. The fishing boats moved. A gull landed on the nearest piling and regarded her without sympathy. "She lied to me." Not a question. Not an accusation. Just the fact of it, arriving somewhere inside her that had been holding the other version for 5 years. "Yes," Ashvorn said. She was so certain. Mira's voice came out thin. She cleared her throat. She made it sound like it was done. Like the only kindness left was for me to not make him say it out loud. She was very convincing, Ashvorn said. It was what she was good at. Kaelin had not moved. He was watching her the way she had learned, over 5 years, that her son watched things. Patient and still, and giving nothing away until he decided to give something. Mira, her name again, in that voice. She looked at him. "I looked for you for 5 years," he said. The official search ended because the council made it end, but he stopped. His jaw worked. I kept asking. I kept sending riders south in the trading seasons. I kept the mirror relays active on the South Road. You should have stopped, she said. Her voice came out too thin. She cleared her throat again. You should have chosen someone else. You should have moved on. I know. You didn't. No. She put her hand flat against the harbor wall. The stone was cold and rough and very real. I have twins, she said. I know. You're twins. His voice was quiet. I know. I didn't know I was pregnant when I left. She kept her eyes on the wall. I found out 2 months later. She stopped. I thought about coming back. I thought about it for a long time. Why didn't you? She looked at him. Because even if Lady Voss had lied, even if it wasn't true, it still meant someone in your palace had wanted me gone badly enough to lie to make it happen. And I was alone. And I had 2 children coming. And I could not. She stopped. I could not bring them into a place I wasn't sure was safe. Not for them. I would not risk them. He was very still. Something moved in his face, something that had not been there before. That was the right choice, he said. She blinked. You were alone. You didn't know who to trust. You made the safest choice for them. His voice was low and even. I cannot be angry about that. I am not. She looked at him for a long moment. Something in her chest that had been braced for a long time was beginning to ask if it needed to stay that way. Kaelin, her voice cracked on the second syllable, just slightly. I've been gone for 5 years. I know. It's not simple. It's not. I know that too. He looked at her. I'm not asking for simple. I'm not asking for fast. His voice dropped. I'm asking you not to run. That is all. Don't run. She didn't run. She stood at the harbor wall for another long moment, looking at the water. He stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, not touching, not pressing. The bond thread, the broken one, was humming the way something hums when it is trying to remember the shape it was always supposed to have. She had called it grief for 5 years. She was not sure that had been entirely wrong. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. To the water. You don't. I do. I should have come to you directly. That night. Instead of, you heard something and you believed it. You were 22 and alone, and someone told you the most important thing in the world had already been decided against you. His voice was steady. I don't. He stopped. I should have made it clearer, he said. Before that night. What I wanted. What I had decided. I was waiting for the ceremony because I thought the declaration would mean more. A public claim, in front of the whole pack. He paused. I didn't know that waiting left space for someone to fill the silence with a lie. She turned to look at him. His jaw was tight. He was looking at the water, holding something still. She reached out and touched his jaw, the left side, where the scar ran thin and silver. She had never touched it before. He went very still. Her thumb traced it, once. When did this happen? She asked. Border dispute, he said. 3 years ago. Does it hurt? Not anymore. She took her hand back. She kept it close to her side. He exhaled, slow and controlled. Mira. Her name. His voice broke on it. Just barely. One syllable cracking at the edge. Just enough. She heard it. She understood. We have bread at the house, she said. Her voice came out quieter than she meant it to. Eggs. And something Lena helped make yesterday that I was told not to call terrible even though it's not terrible, said Lena. They both turned. The twins were standing at the corner of the guard post, Lena in front and Rin 1 step behind, both of them watching with 4 amber eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Lena had her arms crossed. I helped make it, so it's not terrible. Mama, you said you weren't going to say it was terrible. I didn't say it was terrible. You were about to. Kaylin looked at the small girl standing in the gray morning light with her dark curls and her crossed arms and her dimpled cheek set in an expression of deep offended dignity. Something in his face shifted. He laughed. A real laugh. Quiet and short and undone. By a 5-year-old girl in a sage green dress who had cut directly through 5 years of grief with the authority of someone who had never doubted she was worth listening to. Mira watched him laugh. The bond thread sang, not humming now, singing. She looked at Rin. He was still standing one step behind his sister, watching Kaylin the way he watched everything, steadily, measuring, and then, very slowly, something in his expression settled. He had decided. Come on then, Mira said. To all of them. To the morning. She turned toward the cottage lane. Lena immediately took Kaylin's hand and began explaining the rest of the harbor cat situation at high volume. Kaylin's hand was very large around her small one, and he held it with the careful grip of someone holding something breakable, even though Lena was demonstrably not breakable at all. At the corner before the lane, Rin walked up beside Kaylin and reached up. He took his hand. Kaylin looked down at him. He said nothing. Rin looked up. You have the same eyes as us, he said. We noticed. A while ago. I noticed too, Kaylin said. Rin considered this. Okay, he said, and kept walking. They had breakfast at the small kitchen table, the 4 of them, plus old Bren, who arrived to apologize about falling asleep and stayed for 2 cups of tea, while Lena climbed onto Kaylin's lap and pointed out every fishing boat she knew by name through the window. Ashvorn sat in the corner with his tea and the expression of a man who was not going to ruin this by speaking. At some point, Kaylin looked across the table at Mira. She looked back. The bond thread moved between them like light through salt water, whole and steady and waiting. He said her name once, quietly, just once, while the children were arguing over the last piece of bread. Just her name. And his voice broke on it, the same way it had at the harbor. Just barely. Just enough. She heard it. This time, she let herself hear it all the way. Later, when the twins were in their beds for the afternoon rest, and Bren had gone home, and Ashvorn had tactfully taken himself to the harbor to count boats, Kaylin and Mira sat at the kitchen table. The sea moved outside the window. The cottage was warm. He reached across the table. He turned her left hand over, palm up, and pressed his thumb gently to the scar there. The night you left, he said. East Gate fence post. I was moving fast. He looked at the scar for a long time. He pressed his mouth to it, once, warm and careful and asking nothing. She breathed. The bond settled, full and heavy and exactly right. She did not run. 2 days later, in the small stone bedroom that smelled of sea air and dried lavender, the bond mark was made. She told him what she wanted. She said it plainly, because she was done being afraid of her own voice. He was careful. Then, he was undone. Then, be careful again. The mark landed where it had always been meant to land, and the bond that had been broken for 5 years came home all at once. Not gently. All at once. 5 years of his grief and his searching and his holding still. It poured through the thread and into her chest until she could not tell where she ended, and he began. She understood in that moment the full weight of what she had been carrying alone. He held her after. Very carefully. The way you hold something you have been afraid of losing and have found again and are still even now, half afraid to believe. She let him. For the first time in 5 years, she let someone hold her without planning how to leave. She woke before he did. Gray morning light through the cottage window, the sound of the harbor, ropes and water, and a gull landing somewhere close. The smell of salt and the faint warmth of him beside her. She lay still and looked at the ceiling. The bond thread was not cold. It had never been cold. She understood that now it had always been there, warm and full and waiting. She had been the one keeping it cold, calling it grief so she would not have to call it love. She turned her head and looked at him. He was awake. He had been awake for a while, she thought. He was looking at the ceiling too, one hand resting open at his side. His jaw was relaxed. The scar along it caught the morning light. He felt her looking. He turned his head. Neither of them spoke. After a long moment, he reached over and tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. Slowly, like he had been thinking about doing it for a long time. "Good morning," he said. His voice was very low. It did not break. She almost said something ordinary. She stopped herself. "Good morning," she said. That was enough. Down the hall, Lena hit the floor running. Rin's voice, careful, slower, followed a moment after. Then a thump, which was almost certainly Lena running into the door frame, and then a pause, and then Rin's voice saying something too quiet to hear, and then Lena's voice saying something back. Mira closed her eyes. She could hear all four of them breathing. Herself, Kaylin, Rin down the hall, Lena recovering from the doorframe. 4 people in one small cottage on the south coast. The sea outside. The morning is coming in. She had built a good life in Saltmere. She had not known it was waiting to become this. The door handle turned. Lena appeared in the doorway. She assessed the situation, her mother and a large man she had decided to accept, with the speed of a child who had already made up her mind and was not going to revisit it. She crossed the room and climbed directly onto the bed. "Mama," she said, settling between them with complete authority. "What's for breakfast?" Kaylin made a sound, almost a laugh. Almost. Mira looked at the ceiling. "Eggs," she said. "Can he cook?" Lena pointed at Kaylin. "He seems like he could cook." "I cannot cook," Kaylin said. Lena considered this. "That's fine. Rin can't either." She pulled the blanket over herself. "We can teach you." Rin appeared in the doorway, took one look at the 3 of them, and sat down in the doorframe to wait. He had the expression of someone who was going to pretend this was normal until it was. It already was. A week later, Mira opened her herb stall at dawn. Same gray cobblestones. Same wooden counter. Same smell of rosemary and salt air, and the harbor coming to life behind her. Different morning. Kaylin stood at her left shoulder. He was not helping. He had no idea what she needed or where anything went, but he was there, which was the thing. Watching the road. Watching her hands when she worked. Learning the shape of this life she had built. Rin had stationed himself at the end of the counter, arms crossed, in what appeared to be a self-appointed guard role. Lena had already disappeared into the market crowd, headed for the baker's cart. Mira arranged the lavender in its row. She looked up at the road. A letter had arrived at the cottage door 3 days ago. No seal, no address. A hand she recognized from a corridor 5 years ago. She had read it standing at the kitchen table. 4 words. Then, she had folded it, set it down. Kaylin had been in the doorway. He had watched her face. "What is it?" he had asked. She had handed it to him without speaking. He read it. He read it once more. He set it on the table. He looked at her. "Do you want to tell me about her?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "but not today." He had nodded. He had pulled the letter toward him and folded it in half and set it face down, like setting down a thing that would keep. "Then not today," he had said. Outside, Lena had called them for something. They had gone. Now Mira stood at her stall in the morning light. The market moved around her. The harbor bell rang once for the hour. She set out the fever bark packets in their neat row. She felt the bond thread, whole now, singing, warm against her sternum. She felt Kaylin at her left shoulder. She felt Rin at the end of the counter. Down the market row, Lena's voice rose above the crowd, already friends with the baker's wife. 5 years ago, Mira had stood in this market with her head down, being careful and small and forgettable. She lifted her head. The letter was in Lady Voss's hand. It said 4 words. It said, "I'm not finished yet." Mira looked at the morning, at her twins, at the man at her shoulder who had ridden through the night and crouched on a guard post floor and eaten terrible bread, and said not today when she needed not today. She was not afraid. Whatever came next, they would face it. But first, this morning, this market. This family that had found its way to her in pieces through a signal mirror and a silver wolf and 2 small children who had never once doubted that the world was on their side. She smiled at her first customer of the morning. She began the day.